Update 1.4 in Boneworks is live right now. It's featuring 3 new scenes. 1, Tuscany, the much anticipated Tuscany. 2, it's featuring the Redacted Chamber, the much anticipated Redacted Chamber. And 3, something you guys have never heard of before, HandgunBox, which is featuring a new handgun. HandgunBox has a handful of different areas. However, today we just want to talk about the time trial segment, which is basically a handgun course where you go through, there's 45 enemies and you try to defeat them as fast as you can. It's a time trial. We look forward to seeing your guys' high scores. So what better way to introduce you to it than to talk to the guy who laid it out, Chris, the designer, who basically built the course, laid out the encounters along with a lot of other places in Boneworks. He did primarily the dungeon level, the central station, and he did the encounters in tower, all of the first floor as well as the upstairs tower. And that sort of led us to this handgun course because it was so much fun doing that upstairs encounter, which was like one of the later things that we added into Boneworks. We feel like we were really getting our groove and it was really fun. And then it was time to ship the game. So we're like, hey, let's do another time trial course, just basically make an airsoft course where you go through and take guys out. So yeah, I guess Chris had talk us through a little bit of your like the journey through Stress Level Zero. So from becoming a video editor to all the way to be doing game design in Boneworks.
So the interesting thing is that I never considered myself somebody who would be a game designer. You know, I've always been into games, but I was a video editor first and foremost. And in 2013, I got a blast out from D on Facebook. I had met him back in college looking for a video editor. So I came in, did a test video, which I think was the first Battlefield video, and you guys liked what I did, and so I stayed on for the next 3.5 years. I think the DayZ videos were the first ones that really took off, and that were something I was really proud of.
Yeah, the DayZ, the murder in the restaurant was an all-time highlight.
Oh my God!
Explain what happened. Explain what happened to us.
It's my first day at work, and I've been stabbed twice.
I was doing that for a long time, and I had a lot of fun, but it reached the point where I didn't really feel particularly challenged anymore, and I was starting to look for other works, maybe doing movie trailer editing. That was when you told me perhaps I could do the trailers for the games that you guys were starting to make for Stress Level Zero.
Yeah, and I think this is an interesting point because a lot of people at Stress Level Zero follow the same path where it's like we're not traditionally game developers. We were all doing stuff, a lot of stuff in the video side. You know, some people were doing other game stuff, but pretty much transitioned into it. And I think that was really good for VR because VR is a completely new thing. And so it's fitting that we weren't really carrying the baggage of the more traditional game development. Instead, we were used to and accustomed to like wearing new hats and learning new things and picking up new software. So learning VR was just another new thing to learn, just like the last handful of them that we did, you know?
And so to make those trailers, I had to capture game footage. And of course, we had the first-person stuff, which was fun in and of itself to figure out new ways to record that gameplay that looked compelling and interesting because it's so much different than recording the flat-screen gameplay that we've been doing for Node for so long. Then on top of that, I wanted to have some more like cinematic, cutscene-y sort of shots for the trailer. So I taught myself some really basic animating within Unity, went into one of the levels that Alex had made, moved some rocks around, and flew some ships through it. So I did that, and I think that Alex was impressed enough with what I did that after I made that, he put me on to doing some of the larger environments for the Hover Drunker single player. And that kind of naturally transitioned into doing the cutscenes for Duck Season. And then once Boneworks started, I was barely doing any video editing at all and was basically full-time doing level design and encounters and stuff.
So it's pretty much it. It's like just poking around in that software led to finding that it's like there's actually a lot of crossover between the similar skills, you know, right? Where it's like you're
surprisingly so.
Instead of assembling shots, instead you're grabbing different assets and you're assembling them to make different scenes. And so we kind of slowly grew from there. We just found like the common ground and transitioned it over. Talk a little bit about your approach to the encounters, like especially starting with tower and then leading into the time trial.
I have a big history with shooters. I've been playing them my whole life, and I really had a good idea of how I wanted to do Omni encounters. And so the way that I crafted it was making sure that every sightline was really controlled, especially up in the top of the tower. I wanted to have a ton of enemies, but it was this big open environment, so I had to figure out a way that I could have all these enemies and not have you just be overwhelmed by 100 targets in front of you. So I made sure to really control those sightlines so that at any given time you could only see maybe 2 or 3 at a time, even though there was 50 enemies ahead of you on the course. And that transitioned into the time trial, where we have 45 enemies.
On a gameplay level, it's like the sight lines are important in the positioning, and you don't want to be in a spot where there's just 50 things shooting at you. And then at the same time, too, on a technical level, performance-wise, like obviously, even though there's 45 enemies in this small course, they're not all 45 aren't running at the same time for performance reasons. So it's like it's a good marriage where it's the design benefits as well as the technical, you know, performance aspect that benefits from the same like mentality.
Right. The fun thing about the time trial is that even though you don't see them all at once, they are all there. So there's going to be a lot of really creative ways to solve that time trial. The thing that really inspired me to do the time trial instead of just another encounter was way back in Call of Duty 4, the original Modern Warfare. The tutorial course, FNG, had a time trial where they would basically run you through the first level of the game, but as like a plywood airsoft course. It was all about like, do it as quick as possible. And you get to the end and they're like, that was all right, recruit, but I think you could do better.
Pretty good soap, but I've seen better.
Fastest time was about 8.5 seconds. So I really wanted people to have the opportunity, with the freedom that VR offers you and creative problem solving, to see what kind of ways that they can do a similar time trial course. And I think people are going to get really creative and have a lot of fun with it.
Yeah, it's also, I think it's really fitting to do the, because obviously like with Node, we did a lot of airsoft type of content. And one of the places, Tax City, had a very similar, like, there's a very common like airsoft course look, right? And with Boneworks, we wanted to recreate that fun of airsoft, of, reloading your gun, of going around and like having it sort of like simulate closer to real firearms. That was really the sort of magic we wanted to capture within Boneworks systems. And so it's kind of cool to play it in a course that looks like that with the plywood. I think with VR, we finally have gotten it.
Of course, you don't get to do a zip line through a window shooting enemies in midair in airsoft, so.
Yeah, I mean, VR is like a Disney attraction, right? It's like a ride just for you, right? What's your best time right now?
My best time in the course right now is 1:56.
1:56, and that's the best in the office by far since you made it.
Yeah, since I made it, I knew all the tricks. I didn't record that run, so the one we're going to show at the end of this video is going to be a little bit more cinematic, a little bit longer.
Update 1.4 is out right now. To access the new content, essentially what you do is you go to the museum, and right by the reclamation bin where you get the original sandbox, we've added the module for the redacted chamber. And from the redacted chamber, it leads to the whole update sort of unfurls from there. So that's how you get started. Head over there, and in the meantime, check out Chris's run.
Yeah, peace guys, enjoy the time trial.
Absolutely.